Hello everyone. In this presentation, I would love to introduce you to my forthcoming article, The Denormalisation of Suicide. This presentation is divided into two parts. In the first part, I will be looking at the definitions of suicide as well as the diversity of suicide across the globe. In the second part, I'll be examining the global suicide prevention campaigns initiated mostly by the World Health Organization or WHO. Okay, what is suicide? You might find suicide be sometimes the equivalence of the term voluntary death, or in the second definition, suicide is considered as an action that aims at ending lives prematurely. However, these two definitions represent the two norms listed down below. The life is good, and life should only end when it is mature to end, when it has to end. And death is bad. Death should only be received involuntarily. However, if we look at the diversity of the culture all over the world, we may find these two norms are not universal. So, according to Matteo Barbagli, suicide can be categorized into four types based on whom the action is for and whom the action is against. According to this, suicide can be a virtue or even an obligation, which means it can be considered as a good thing to do or something that you or someone has to do, especially when suicide is altruistic or be used as a weapon. So here are three examples of when suicide is a virtue. Here are two examples of when suicide is an obligation, something that one is expected to do or has to do. So now let us look at the global suicide prevention campaigns. And this slides, I will be introducing the origins of GSP campaigns nowadays, which is the medicalisation of suicide back in the 19th centuries in Europe. In that time and space, um, people witnessed a massive movement of modernization and secularization. So the secularization of suicide detached suicide from religions and ethics. Thereafter, scholarly attentions were drawn from the ethics involved in suicide to the causes of suicide. And scholars like Sigmund Freud and Emil Durkheim began to look at suicide as an outcome of certain disorders or even a disorder itself, based on their different expertise. But what is in common that suicide is pathological, it is abnormal, according to um, the scholars back in that century in Europe. So here we can see that the medicalisation of suicide still shadows the present day global suicide prevention campaigns initiated by WHO in year 2013 to 14. The use of medical languages in the this landmark, so-called landmark report of global suicide prevention um, reflect that this report still considers suicide as a medical issue, as a pathological issue. Also, this report asserts that each suicide is a personal tragedy, is a tragic, and also suicide connects suicide with a huge burden, yeah, for individuals, families, communities, and countries. Therefore, according to this report, suicide can only be egoistic or aggressive, based on the four types of suicide given by Barbagli. And the top recommended method for suicide prevention, well, I have to state here that this is not the only method recommended in the report, but the top one is to restrict access to the means of suicide, um, rather than prioritizing the mitigation of those socioeconomic reasons for suicide, such as poverty, sense of isolation, or social unrest in particular areas, regions. Okay, in conclusion, well, where do we go from here? Well, here is one piece of suggestion that I wish to give is that GSP movement should be aware of the diversity in the anthropology of suicide, death, and dying, which is to say that how different people or people in different cultures think about suicide. It is normal or not, and what do they think about death? It is good or bad? It is what can cause death? What causes of death are normal? And also the process of dying, how people die. And please, I wish to inspire you to consider this um, two questions: that is life an absolute good, and is death equal to suffering? Especially when you try to provide uh, global health or healthcare services, please consider these two questions. Well, thank you for watching or listening to this presentation. Hope this is interesting or helpful in some ways.